Chapter 12. The burden of the word of the Lord for Israel, saith the Lord, which stretcheth forth the heavens, and layeth the foundation of the earth, and formeth the spirit of man within him. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. In that day, saith the Lord, I will smite every horse with astonishment, and his rider with madness. And I will open mine eyes upon the house of Judah, and will smite every horse of the people with blindness. And the governors of Judah shall say in their heart, the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall be my strength, in the Lord of hosts their God. In that day will I make the governors of Judah like an hearth of fire among the wood, and like a torch of fire in a sheaf, and they shall devour all the people round about, on the right hand and on the left. And Jerusalem shall be inhabited again in her own place, even in Jerusalem. The Lord also shall save the tents of Judah first, that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem do not magnify themselves against Judah. In that day shall the Lord defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and he that is feeble among them at that day shall be as David, and the house of David shall be as God, as the angel of the Lord before them. And it shall come to pass in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. And I will pour out upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplications, and they shall look upon me whom they have pierced. And they shall mourn for him, as one mourneth for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him, as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn. In that day shall there be great mourning in Jerusalem, as the mourning of Hadad-rimmon in the valley of Megiddon. And the land shall mourn every family apart, the family of the house of David apart, and their wives apart, the family of the house of Nathan apart, and their wives apart, the family of the house of Levi apart, and their wives apart, the family of Shimei apart, and their wives apart, all the families that remain, every family apart, and their wives apart. There are three things that, generally speaking, seem to come up most frequently in this particular chapter. As an overall description, we could call this sort of like the burdensome stone chapter. He makes the point, Zechariah makes the point that in the latter days that there will be some countries that will come against Israel to battle. And they will decide that they really want to take Israel on for all Israel is worth and capture it, take it over and rule it and do whatever they can. And that any of them that try, and he uses the description, will find Israel like a burdensome rock. And what he means is that, and I've been in this kind of situation myself doing landscaping years ago. I had somebody drop off some rock, and I had to move the rock, not that far, but the rock was an odd shape, and it didn't roll well, and it didn't couldn't roll it over anyway. So the only way that was really practical, because I didn't have a wheelbarrow, was to try and get it into my arms and hold it on my knees and try to sort of semi-walk with it over to the spot. And that was a burdensome rock, I'll tell you, because it was hard to do, and it was very, very difficult to sustain, and a lot of pain and a lot of stress on my back. And anybody that tries to take on Israel is going to find that they are going to be like that burdensome rock. They aren't going to be able to do much with them, and everything they're going to try is going to hurt and be painful, and they're going to pay for it seriously. The second thing is called the mourning, M-O-U-R, which means the grief, the agony on the death of at Hadad-rimmon. Now, Hadad-rimmon was where, I think it was either where King Josiah, who was probably the most righteous and pious of all Israel's kings, was either wounded by Pharaoh Necho or where he died. I can't remember which one it was. But he had a battle with the Egyptians. Pharaoh Necho was the leader of that particular army of the Egyptians, and and King Josiah was injured, didn't die right away, went to this place, I think it was Hadad-rimmon where he went to, And in very short order, he died. And he was so intensely loved by especially the righteous people in the country. He was such a good man that the mourning, the grief for him was so profound, it was a national tragedy. If you were going to compare it to anything that you might, as I certainly recognize from my high school days, I remember being in history class, Mr. Heaver's history class at Nelson High School in Burlington, Ontario, when it was announced that President Kennedy had been assassinated in the United States. That was such a profound trauma. And I watched the TV, I watched Walter Cronkite, I watched all of the stuff that happened over the next several days on TV. I think we all did. We never experienced anything like that. It was a international tragedy. And for Israel, this was a devastating event to have such a righteous man, a man on whom they had such great hopes, die. And the grief for him was so profound, it was absolutely incredible. And they using this national grief as a symbol for the grief that Israel would feel when they realized that the Savior whom they rejected was in fact the Savior they should have accepted as Jesus the Christ. Now in verses 11 through 14 it talks about great mourning in Jerusalem. And there will be three causes, at least, for the great mourning in Jerusalem. The first one is that many of the Jews will have been killed in the battle for Jerusalem. Cause for great sorrow there. Anytime there's a death in your family, you feel it. Anytime there's a death in somebody that's close to you, you're going to feel it. Anytime you're in a community and there's a great number of deaths, you're going to be affected by it. The second reason is that families will be broken up, and part of them they'll have been scattered, and there will be no way to find out where the other members of the family are, whether they're alive or dead. And there will be great cause for mourning there, great cause for loss, feelings of loss, feeling alone, all of that. And last but not least, will come the realization that Jesus the Christ, who came to them in absolute, pure, unbridled love, was rejected by them and was crucified by the Romans.